Dad, do you remember the time when I was a little kid and we were going to Kmart and we were looking for a parking space and we drove by this open space like right next to the front door? It was a great spot, and you drove right by it, and I was like, Dad, what about that spot? That's a great spot. We should take that spot. And you said, no, we'll leave that for an old person. Do you remember that? No, don't remember that. Yeah, and I was like, but what if some guy in his like 20s parks there instead of an old guy? What if that happens? What if that happens? And you said, well, I'm sure he'll be really pleased that he got such a great parking space. Do you remember that? No, I don't remember that. Dad, how is it possible that I can remember this dialogue almost verbatim, and yet you can't remember it at all? But I don't know. These are the types of exchanges that fascinate me. The exchanges between me, the adult child, and my parents. Moments that are crystal clear in my memory, but yet my parents don't remember them at all. And you might say, oh, Andrew, are your parents ill that they can't remember? No, they're not ill at all. It's just that these moments that are so crystal clear to me happen to be moments that are random, nondescript, seemingly meaningless moments. And that's why they have no memory. And that fascinates me, that these moments that mean so much to me are meaningless to them. Like the time we were at Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, where I grew up. And Riverfront, as we all know, is the home of the Big Red Machine, the Cincinnati Reds. And it was 1977, and just after they won the World Series in 76. And we were at a game, the game was over, and instead of getting in the station wagon and driving home, we went to the basement of Riverfront Stadium, to the parking garage, because that's where the players would leave. They'd exit out this door and go into their cars. And this was 1977, where security was not really a big priority. And so you could go down there and hang out and try to get an autograph. And so that's what we did. And there was probably a group of 30 or 40 of us, mostly kids, but not all kids. And so we'd stand there and we'd wait, and the door would open, and there'd be that moment of suspense. Is that Johnny Bench? Is that Pete Rose? And usually it was an equipment manager or a bullpen coach. But we'd be patient, and we'd wait, and we'd hope. And then this one time the door opened, and these 4 guys walked out. I didn't know at the time who they were, but I would later find out that they were the umpires, and they were leaving as a group. Now, we kids, we didn't know who they were, but we knew who they weren't, okay? These guys were not ball players. They were entirely too old and entirely too out of shape. So we had no interest in getting their autograph, which was a good thing because they had no interest in waiting. They were very impatient, and they just wanted to get to their cars. And so, the kids knew that these weren't ball players, so we'd slowly get out of the way. But we didn't move fast enough for these umpires. They basically bull rushed through this crowd of kids, which isn't cool. And so they're bull rushing their way through, and they're heading toward the back, and that's where my dad is. He's not an autograph seeker. In fact, he's not even a baseball fan. So he's standing in the back watching all of this happen. And he sees the umpires bull rushing through all these kids, and he's not too happy about it. So as they get into his general area, he doesn't really make an effort to get out of the way. He may have made a bit of an effort to get into their way, maybe. And so as the umpires are coming by, there may have been a brush of the shoulder, ever so slight. And this certainly caught the attention of one of the umpires, and the umpire stopped, and he turned, and I'm watching this whole thing, and he looks at my dad sternly, and he says, "You wouldn't trip an umpire, would you?" And my dad just very calmly says, "Only if I got the chance." And even as an 8-year-old, I thought that was awesome. I didn't know why. I didn't know why I thought it was awesome, but man, it was awesome. It was so amusing, and I replayed that in my head all the time, and I told my friends about it. And I just thought it was so cool. And then as I got older, honestly, I would continue to think about this throughout my childhood. And then as I became an adult, I continued to think about it, and now it started to take on new meaning. And it taught me an important lesson about life, and it taught me a nice lesson about my dad. And it taught me that you can control the room even if you're the quietest guy in the room. It taught me the power of a quick wit and a sharp tongue. It also taught me that I was the only one who was really immersed in the grandeur of the moment, because my dad didn't remember it. Now, he knows it now because I've told it so many times. He's aware of it. But again, and that's when I started to think, how is this possible? How can it be so meaningful to me and so meaningless to him? That was a marker of my childhood. Kind of like the time I was at home with my mom, probably 1978. I'm 8 years old. It's a typical weekend day, Saturday. My mom's doing something. I'm doing nothing. Well, I'm not doing nothing. I'm watching Pepper. And Pepper is our cat. And I notice Pepper's tail is always up. Like all the time. Not like sometimes when he's scared. All the time. Bam. Pepper's tail is up. You don't need to be an 8-year-old to think that's cool. That's impressive. Cats are cool. And the tail's always up. So I said, Mom, how hard do you think it is for Pepper to keep his tail up? Classic kid question. Impossible to answer kid question. All right? What are you going to do if you're the parent? Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to say, oh, not that hard, which is basically ignoring it? Are you going to, it's 1977. You can't Google it. You can't look up wiki answers. Or you can't even look up the 70s equivalent of a search engine, which is called an encyclopedia. They're not going to have anything about how heavy is a cat's tail. But there you go, Mom. There's your question. How hard is it for Pepper to keep his tail up? Well, my mom was not scared off. And she said, oh, probably about as hard as it is for us to keep our eyelids up. Eyelids up? I have eyelids, and I'm keeping my eyelids up. My mom had rocked my world. I didn't know about this. I didn't realize that I had eyelids, and I was keeping them up all the time. And so for like the next week, I was done with Pepper and the tail, and I moved on to this awesome thing, almost as cool as the cat. I got my eyelids up all the time, and it's like no big deal. I'm not wearing myself out. I got my eyelids open. And that's just incredible. And I'm thinking, we're like now the tough guys in the neighborhood. Me, with my eyelids up. And Pepper, bam, with his tail up. No one's going to mess with us, right? It was awesome. And I replayed that moment all the time as a kid. And I continued to replay it as an adult. And just like my dad with the umpire, this moment with my mom took on a whole new meaning when I became a father. As a kid, it was amusing. But as an adult, as a young father, it became meaningful. Because I threw my mom a slicing curveball, knuckleball of a question, and she knocked it out of the park. And that's awesome. And what did that teach me about my mom? It taught me, honestly, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that in that moment, my mom demonstrated her love for me. And of course, the mom demonstrates her love for her son and her children millions of times. But a son doesn't realize it millions of times. Some moms think they never realize it. But in that moment, I realized it. Maybe I didn't realize it until I was an adult. But it's accurate and true. My mom demonstrated her love for me in that moment. And I think, when that time comes for me, am I going to be present? And that's a term we hear a lot about. It's easy to scoff about the concept of being present. Of course you're present. I'm here. If I weren't here, I wouldn't be here. So I'm present. Obviously, it means a lot more than that. And in that moment, my mom was present, and she wowed her son. Now, my mom had another son, known as my brother. And he was a big brother, still is a big brother, actually. And it was 1979, and I was 9, and he was 13. And my parents had decided that 9 was not old enough to mow the lawn. So I would do the next best thing. I would watch Tim mow the lawn. And that was important. This was a big deal because let's face it, if he makes a mistake, he could lose his mowing privileges and I get called up. So I'm out there and I'm watching Tim mow the lawn. And as we all know, there are various techniques for mowing a lawn. And Tim was fond of the sort of perimeter circular method where he would move around the perimeter of the lawn in ever shorter, smaller circles. And that is one way to do it. I, of course, prefer the method of just the up and back, which is obviously superior. But we don't need to get into that. Now, there's another critical issue when you're mowing the lawn, and that is how much are you going to mow at any one time? How much of the lawnmower will you place in the unmowed part of the grass? You know, if you're in a rush or you just don't care, you're going to put the whole lawnmower in the uncut and you're just going to bull through like an umpire plowing through kids. That's what you're going to do. Or you could be like Tim and do the exact opposite. And he's barely mowing anything. He's like barely beyond the width of the wheel is what he's mowing at each time. And that's insane. That's absurd. And I had enough. And I said, that's it. I'm going to alert the authorities. So I marched my 9-year-old self into the house. And I was like, Dad, this is insane. Tim has lost his mind. He's barely mowing the grass like 2 inches at a time. He's going to break the yard. Okay? We need to do something. This is outrageous. So my dad, to his credit, in the middle of this emergency, he kept his calm. And he said, I think Tim knows what he's doing. What? Tim knows what he's doing? How is that even an option? Tim knows what he's doing. We need to get the hose. You need to grab the mower. We need to act. Tim knows what he's doing. That's insane. But I wasn't getting anywhere, so I left. I went back outside, and I tried to calm down. And then I gave this theory some thought. Tim knows what he's doing. Got to be honest, I'd never considered that option before. Dad has faith in Tim. Dad thinks Tim knows what he's doing. I mean, I guess theoretically that's possible. Nothing I'd ever really considered before. And it took me several days, it may have taken me weeks or months, to wrap my head around this concept that Tim knew what he was doing. But eventually I did. I started to see my brother in a new light. And I would replay that moment just like the other moments in my mind. And then when I became an adult and a father, I would continue to revisit this. And just like the other moments, it took on new meaning. And it showed me what an impact a parent's actions can have on a kid. And that's obvious, right? Who would debate that? But it wasn't clear to me until that moment. And I learned and I realized what an impact my dad had and how he shaped my view of my brother. And how important it is as a father and as a parent that the more faith I show in people, the more faith my kids will have in people. And so, like I said, I would think about these moments all the time. And even as an adult, they'd come back to me, and they'd be amusing, but they'd also be educational. And the more I thought about them as a group, it started to occur to me that they have something in common. And that was this. Parents have no idea what's going to have a lasting impact on their kids. No idea. And it's not just that they can't control the moments. They don't even know when the moments happen. That's a pretty startling realization. I work very hard to create moments, to craft memories. And these aren't fake moments. These are real, meaningful moments. Baseball games, summer vacations, hikes in the Grand Canyon. Those are the moments I remember. But the moments that have an impact on my kids, the moments that my kids will relive 30 years from now, those moments may pass in my present without me even noticing. And as a parent, my only response was, that's not fair. Absolutely unacceptable. But the more I thought about it, I came to yet another realization, all this path. Fortunately, I now know everything. But what I learned was parenting isn't about the grand moments. It's not about the graduations and the birthday parties and the hikes in the national parks. Parenting is defined by time spent in parking garages and time at home on a Saturday with your cat. That's what parenting's all about. So, when the umpires come charging at me, or the lawn isn't mowed just right, and my kids look to me for answers, I hope I can come through. Generally speaking, I think I am prepared. I think I have the strength. I know I have the strength. Because as I'm sure all of you have noticed, my eyelids have been up this entire time. Thank you.